strawweight division is considered the strongest class in women's MMA, and former champion Joanna Jedrzeczyk was a key factor in its rise in prominence. After hanging up the gloves earlier this year, we take a look back at Joanna's MMA career, one that took her from Fight Pass afterthought to one of the UFC's most popular stars. Welcome to the INC, and this is the story of Joanna Jedrzeczyk. On May 19, 2012, Joanna Jedrzeczyk made her pro debut against Sylwia Juszkiewicz for the SFT promotion in Kołobrzeg. Joanna, however, was no stranger to combat sport. Between 2003 and 2012, the Pole had been one of the most acclaimed Muay Thai fighters in Europe, winning 9 IFMA world and European titles as well as championship success in kickboxing. Joanna would end her Muay Thai career with a 64-6 record, 3 of those losses coming against fellow future UFC star Valentina Shevchenko. Joanna would go on to win her debut by unanimous decision, a harbinger of things to come as the Pole began making inroads on the European regional scene, competing in Russia and Poland, where she displayed the flurried style that would become her trademark over the coming years. By 2014, Joanna had built a 5-0 record of one-sided victories, the most infamous coming against Katie Jackson when officials were forced to abandon the match due to the damage sustained by her opponent. It was a win over another British fighter that launched Joanna to the global stage. Rosie Sexton had been a pioneer of British MMA since 2002, with her match at Cage Warriors 69 designed as a celebratory homecoming. Joanna, however, would dominate the veteran over the first 5 minutes before bringing a merciful end to the fight midway through the second.
Good decision from the referee there.
One shot!
Due to Cage Warriors' connections with the UFC, Joanna was immediately linked with a move to the promotion, with company bosses encouraging her to drop from 125 to compete in their new strawweight division. Due to issues securing a work visa, Joanna was denied a spot on The Ultimate Fighter to crown the company's first champion, instead forming a part of a 4-woman tournament to determine the victor's first opponent. Joanna made her UFC debut against Juliana Lima on the Fight Pass portion of Fight Night San Jose. Joanna survived early aggression from her opponent to claim a comfortable decision, peppering Lima with jabs, kicks, and a heavy overhand right that repeatedly found holes in the Brazilian's defense. A second win followed in December against unbeaten Claudia Gadelha, one marred in controversy, however, with most fans believing Gadelha had done enough to claim the win. That same weekend, Carla Esparza beat Rose Namajunas to win the 20th season of The Ultimate Fighter. And with champion and challenger both confirmed, the strawweight division was ready to enter the mainstream. Esparza and Joanna would square off in the co-main of UFC 185, with the champion entering the match as a minus 160 favorite. Esparza started strong with an early takedown, only for Joanna to quickly return to her feet. From there, it was one-way traffic, as Joanna began piecing apart her overmatched opponent, leaving her to resort to desperate shots in a bid to change her fortunes. Joanna maintained her pressure when the two recommenced battle for the second, before one final flurry of offense proved too much for Esparza. Joanna's win is regarded as one of the most one-sided title fights in UFC history, making the Pole the first European champion since Andrei Arlovski 10 years prior. Despite this, most fans treated Joanna's title win as an afterthought, not realizing it would mark the start of one of the most dominant title reigns ever seen in the promotion. Joanna's first defense came against former Invicta champion Jessica Penn at Fight Night Berlin. The fight played out similar to Esparza, with Joanna bludgeoning her grappling-heavy opponent before the referee was forced to intervene due to an accumulation of strikes. A second defense followed against Valerie Letourneau in Australia, but with fellow women's champ Ronda Rousey stealing the headlines, Joanna's exploits were treated as an afterthought by the majority of fans. That all changed in 2016 when Joanna was booked as a coach on The Ultimate Fighter against #1 contender Claudia Gadelha. The season saw Joanna show a new side to her personality, a swaggering anti-hero who wasn't afraid to use trash talk and mind games to get in the head of her opponent. The coach's feud would be the highlight of a forgettable Ultimate Fighter season, and leading UFC bosses to book the two in a rematch at the show's finale in July. Gadelha started strongly by rocking Joanna in the opening seconds, and seemingly overwhelming the Polish fighter with her combo of wrestling and power punches. Joanna, however, managed to survive the onslaught, and as Gadelha's cardio started to wane, she took control with persistent striking against her immobile opponent, eventually claiming a unanimous decision. The fight was widely praised by the MMA community, with several publications placing it as one of the best fights of the year, with some believing in hindsight it marked the moment Strawweight surpassed Bantamweight as the company's premier women's division. Joanna's newfound star saw her given a spot on the UFC's first Madison Square Garden show, where she'd take on Karolina Kowalkiewicz in an all-Polish encounter. Joanna was at her clinical best to neutralize Karolina's offense, claiming a third straight decision in comparatively straightforward fashion, even if her compatriot landed the fight's most meaningful strike midway throughout the fourth round.
Oh, she gets tagged! She attacked hard! Kowalkiewicz moving forward!
Despite her success, Joanna chose to leave her hometown training camp to join with American Top Team. This before her next title defense against Jessica Andrade at UFC 211. With knockout power and a strong grappling game, many tipped Andrade to be the fighter to finally dethrone the champion. Instead, it would be Joanna's most dominant performance, outlanding the Brazilian by 142 strikes, a record that still stands for a UFC title fight. By this point, Joanna had finally broken into the MMA mainstream, earning several sponsorship deals and becoming a central figure of the UFC's marketing. And while her pre-fight antics divided opinions, her ability to back it up in the cage shielded her from any major backlash. With Rousey looking at ventures outside of the sport, Joanna had seemingly taken her place as the UFC's biggest female star, and the champion had the chance to equal Rowdy's record when she returned to the octagon that fall. In November 2017, Joanna returned to MSG to take on 6-3 Rose Namajunas, who entered the fight as a 4-1 underdog. Joanna utilized the same trash talk which had become her trademark, but against the stoic fan favorite Namajunas, her antics were seen as more desperate than effective. Joanna had seemingly crossed the line from charismatic anti-hero to a full-blown heel.
Boogie Woman is coming tomorrow, and she doesn't know what's coming!
Many felt Rose's path to victory would be trying to grapple with the champion. Instead, the Whitman fighter showed much improved striking to drop Joanna early and allow the champion to return to her feet. Joanna had been known for starting her fight slowly, but few fans in New York that night were prepared for what happened next.
Well, Rose... Another knockdown!
Namajunas finished Joanna in one of the biggest upsets in UFC history, handing the Pole her first career loss and the first stoppage of her entire combat career. From the swaggering villain earlier in the week, Joanna cut a forlorn figure in the post-fight press conference.
This happens to the greatest, but I will keep my head up. I'm not a champion anymore, but I will be back stronger. But I'm still a professional athlete, and I've been doing this for half of my life, for 14 years. So definitely I will keep my head up and take this as a champion, as a former champion.
Despite the severity of the loss, Joanna was given a second shot at Namajunas for UFC 223, although the match was nearly called into question after Conor McGregor's bus attack nearly caused the champion to withdraw from the fight. Namajunas again got the better of Joanna during the early exchanges before Joanna began neutralizing her opponent with leg kicks. The fight devolving into the 5-round war Joanna would become synonymous with in her later career. With the scores tied going into the final round, Namajunas rallied with a late takedown to claim the decision, in a fight which served as a changing of the guard in the strawweight division. Joanna spent the next 2 years in division limbo, a step above the other strawweight contenders, but unable to get a title shot as long as Namajunas remained champion. Wins over Tisha Torres and Michelle Waterson sandwiched a one-off bid at the flyweight title, where she'd lose a unanimous decision to former Muay Thai rival Valentina Shevchenko. By the turn of the decade, Joanna was seen as a still great fighter entering the downside of her career. There would, however, be one last match to remind fans of her greatness. In August 2019, Zhang Weili claimed the UFC Strawweight title with an upset win over Jessica Andrade, and Joanna was selected as the champion's first challenger for UFC 248. The build to the fight was mired in controversy, with Joanna incurring the wrath of fans with a series of racially motivated tweets directed at her opponent. As with the first Rose fight, Joanna entered the match as the designated villain, and a standout performance was needed to get the public back on her side. What followed is regarded as one of the greatest fights in MMA history, as Joanna's technical striking contrasted nicely with the brawling power of Weili, as the fight crescendoed into 25 minutes of non-stop action. A clash of heads in the middle of the third led to severe swelling on Joanna's forehead, but the former champion continued wading into the fire with reckless abandon. It's easy to see why commentator Daniel Cormier got caught up in the action.
No, it was right on the bubble. It was right on that thing on her forehead.
The fight became the first women's match to ever win the UFC's Fight of the Year honors, but it was one Joanna would be second best in as Weili gained the judges' nod by split decision. Joanna took the next several months off to recover from her injuries, but as the months became years, doubts began over whether she would return to the octagon. Her silence becoming so severe, she was removed from the rankings for inactivity. Joanna, however, remained consistent, stating she would only come back for a title fight or a long-awaited rematch with Weili. The Polish fighter finally got her wish, and just over 2 years after their first fight, Joanna and Weili squared off at the main card of UFC 275. Joanna utilized the same striking that gave her so much success in their first fight, but had little answer for Weili's improved grappling, with the Chinese fighter coming close to finishing the fight midway through the first. Joanna knew she needed to press the action if she wanted to get back in the fight, but her attempts to do so led to a brutal result.
Joanna's constantly pressuring.
The fight was Joanna's fifth loss in her past 7, and the second coming by knockout. At 34, and with little chance of regaining her belt, Joanna made a decision many in the sport had feared.
I'm turning 35 this year. I want to be a mom. I want to be a businesswoman. I appreciate you all. I love you guys. I love you, DC.
Joanna called time on her career with 16 wins and 5 losses, as well as nearly every record in the UFC Strawweight division. But as early as July teased the idea of returning to the sport for a one-off BMF fight. Good old MMA retirements, huh? Joanna can be considered one of the UFC's most important champions. In her time on top, Joanna oversaw Strawweight's transformation from company afterthought to one of its strongest weight classes, thanks in part to the champion's presence and all-action fighting style. Joanna enters the sunset with her Hall of Fame place all but secured. And having started her role as a trainer at American Top Team, her influence will continue to be felt over the coming years. This is the INC. Please like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a video.